Dear God, this episode. Expect a quick review. I'm not even going to try and do the frame animation thing. Let's just put me with an annoyed face on throughout the episode. There we go. There's nothing that annoys me more within media than people making something that's terrible and trying to be ironic with it. What About Discord is probably the worst My Little Pony episode ever made, and I'm including Equestria Girls, Ne'er-Do-Well, and Spike at your service. Equestria Girls at least played with a new idea and had helping Twilight win the crown. Ne'er-Do-Well at least had an interesting idea and would have done right if the main six weren't rubbing in their achievements. Spike at your service is only hampered by Spike having trouble with doing things that he already should be doing. But this episode has a bad idea, bad characterization, bad pacing, bad dialogues, bad jokes, and is just a complete mess. I only sat through it so that I could at least have some credibility towards writing this review. I know I shouldn't feel this way, but I'm insulted. I know I shouldn't be holding ponies this close to myself and crying out among the horde that I've already seen in comment sections everywhere, but I legitimately feel like picking up a pitchfork. Never have I been insulted outright by an episode. Never have I wanted to close an episode after 5 minutes. Like I said before, all the previous episodes I mentioned I actually had patience for, but this episode got greenlit in Season 5. Before I go any further, let me just state that I'm completely aware that this writer has only had one other episode, an arguably bad one, under his belt, so he hasn't grasped the characters yet. I know that in the business side of making a television show, it's merely a blessing that every episode of My Little Pony isn't like this, but this is unacceptable. I don't understand how Hasbro almost axed an episode because Pinkie and Minuet already met so it had canon problems, but an episode with the more forgettable script and idea gets a pass. Besides a few Discord visual gags, this episode is a complete waste of time because the idea of you had to be there jokes and the jealousy that could come from missing out on something is very hard to convey. But you know how you don't convey it? Have all of the characters, even Discord, act out of character by being jerks about Twilight missing out. I'd expect this from Pinkie Pie because she doesn't have a filter, or perhaps Rarity because she would be excited about what she took part in. But why is Rainbow quoting a joke right in front of Twilight when she knows that they don't know anything? I know we want her to have terrible Season 1 characterization for reasons that I will never understand, but this spreads to the rest of the cast. You remember when everyone complained about Ne'er-Do-Well because the friends were rubbing in what they did as Ne'er-Do-Well to Rainbow Dash? This is more or less the same situation, but conveyed even worse. And we're 3 seasons ahead. You know what else? Don't lampshade your terrible character choices and try to push them as a joke. In a show where good characters are what keeps us here, you're basically begging for a bunch of annoyed reviews like this one. Lampshading is used by people who actually write good episodes and have good ideas. With Twilight joking about the potion after the fact, my only response is, then why did you write that in the first place? This is basically that Teen Titans Go episode that everyone keeps throwing in the staff's face because they're insulted that it was made. You know what? I'm gonna put down my pitchfork. This isn't me. Let's start from scratch and throw this script directly in the trash. Here's our idea. Twilight misses out on something fun that everyone else did. She slowly becomes jealous because of it. While I'd argue that Discord shouldn't have even been in this episode, since Twilight could have learned this more without his intervention, this idea could work with or without him. In this idea, let's have Twilight previously commit to whatever it was that she was going to do with the group. Perhaps it was tickets to Wonderbolt's concert or something. We can't have it be too huge because then there's no way Twilight would forget it with the amount of lists and schedules that she has. Keep the book sorting vacation. Obviously, if it's something new that she found would improve her book sorting skills, I'd imagine she would forget a previous obligation and would want to do this ASAP. Alright, so she does it and misses the event. Have the main 5 not think of it as a big deal when they meet up. So when Twilight finally comes out of her castle and meets her friends for the first time, we could still keep some references and reminders among the other characters. Have Twilight remember that she missed out on something in the beginning of Act 1 and close it out that way. In Act 2, have Twilight visit her friends, probably starting with Rainbow Dash, and try to apologize for missing out, but Rainbow cuts her off and tries to be a good host. Want any food, something to drink, etc., etc. Rainbow begins to explain the awesome time that she had, and Twilight notices that Rainbow got some Wonderbolt's memorabilia from the game. Twilight finally apologizes, and Rainbow remembers that Twilight promised to go. Twilight begs for Rainbow to explain the entire show, quill and notepad and hoof, but Rainbow's explanations are mostly fangirling and her being starstruck, so Twilight can't really make sense of what the show is. Rainbow mentions that everyone else went, and Twilight says her goodbyes and leaves. The next scene, Twilight has the other 4 in Sugar Cube Corner and she treated them all to tea and cakes. Twilight apologizes to everyone for not attending, but again, the other 4 don't mind. Twilight tries to ask the other 4 about what happened, but none of them can picture it perfectly. They fumble over what acrobatics they were doing in the air and how fast they were going. We want to go for the fact that Twilight can't really get the details of this event unless she attended. Not only that, but every pony would focus on different things during this event. Rarity would love their outfits, Applejack their courage and how synchronized they were, you get the picture. The act would end with Twilight realizing that the only reason she could understand her friends' references and what they saw was to go see the show herself. She goes to a Wonderbolt show, but it's different from what the other five saw. The final act would culminate with Twilight trying to edge in on the other five's conversations. The other five would get confused, and the conversations would end with Twilight rampantly trying to Me Too until she says something that happened in her concert. Twilight would eventually crack and admit that she didn't see what she saw, and that she was jealous that she missed out on something that all of them enjoyed. The moral would be a little change for this episode, since I think that it's okay to miss out and be honest than try to be fake, would be a good direction for the episode to take. Twilight would promise to attend the next concert, and all the friends would hug and console her. Simply adding Discord would not change the narrative much, since he could take part in the Act 2 scenes. While I understand that this idea is a little more boring, it strays away from all the minds that made this episode so unappealing. If we stick with the empathetic approach of someone missing out on a fun event, we could tug at the heartstrings while also making the watcher understand her problem. I'd argue that this idea makes the episode more of an episode we need rather than an episode that makes you laugh out loud, but I'd take that over what we got. The problem with this episode is that with Discord being the main factor behind all of this shenanigans happening, Twilight doesn't really have to learn the lesson. This is the main factor that made many people complain about Princess Spike. All of the factors were out of Twilight's control, so she was forced to react to the other characters. But even when it was her time to act, she was characterized terribly. There are two unfortunate ultimatums with this episode. Either the writer wrote the entire Mean Six terribly because they were bullies and jerks about what happened, or the writer wrote Discord terribly, completely ignoring 4 previous episodes of backstory, or both. Either way, I'm very disappointed and outright insulted as a writer due to this episode. Nothing in this episode was done well, and I don't see myself watching it again. Do you guys have any suggestions on how the episode could have been changed? I honestly don't think that this episode could have been done without completely changing the framework and idea. I did my best, but perhaps we should have had 25 episodes instead of 26. Have a good day, and I'll see you guys next time. A bag of Vicodin out.